Greetings, everyone. Some may find the content in this video disturbing. Therefore, viewer discretion is strongly advised. I would also like to thank the narrators who helped me with this video. The first, second, and third stories will be narrated by me, BEASTMYSTERY. Stories 4 and 5 will be narrated by Darkness Tales. 6 and 7 will be narrated by Goodnite Goosebumps. Story number 8 will be narrated by Being Scared. Number 9 by MeatLockerStories. And the final story, number 10, will be narrated by Sino Studios. And on a final note, I urge you all not to explore the deep web as it can be a very dark place. With all that being said, let's get into the stories. I've been into scary stuff since I was a kid. My mom got me into scary movies at a pretty young age, watching Stephen King movies and those 80s campy horror films because she was into the morbid lifestyle. Well, naturally, being my mother's daughter, I got into that same lifestyle as I grew older. Watching YouTube and reading articles, you find some pretty scary stuff that not a lot of people would know about. That's how I found about the deep web, the deepest part of the internet where people can buy drugs and illegal military grade weapons, post CP, and watch people kill each other. Now I take everything with a grain of salt. People love to make up stories so you won't sleep at night. So of course, with my morbid curiosity, I wanted to debunk or see if these stories had some truth to them. My best friend Joe is a tech guy at one of the universities here in my hometown, so I asked him how I would venture out into the deep web. He looked at me as if I was stupid and proceeded to warn me that I should not do something that I knew nothing about. Well, being the stubborn alpha female that I am, I told him that he needed to shut up and teach me. He nodded his head politely and grabbed my computer. He first went through the steps on how I get there. First, download and install the Tor browsing bundle. This system is configured to use a Tor relay network, which anonymizes your connection through a distributed set of relays in order to prevent someone from learning your physical location. Second, you go to the built-in wiki page set up for the deep web. This site, he said, helps you navigate through the matrix and gets you where you need to be. With my girlish excitement, I thanked him and immediately sped home to my apartment. I turned on Spotify, lit some candles, and dimmed the lights so I can start my new adventure. My MacBook Air turned on with a glee-ish tone and I put my cursor over the Tor symbol. At first I hesitated. Of course I was nervous because I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but with the beat thrusting coming from my phone, I clicked on the symbol. Bringing up the wiki page, I started scrolling through some of the pages. Like I thought, they were mostly drug related stuff. If I desired to buy a pound of heroin, I guess that would be the place to go. I then scrolled through a page that looks like a chat room. I could see people's usernames as they're communicating back and forth. I watched for a few minutes just to see what these people were talking about. Then a link popped up. I was intrigued, so I clicked on it. At first it seemed like a normal porno page, one that you would find on the internet these days. There was an area where you could click on the hyperlink and go into that room. Going down the page, I saw one that caught my eye. It said, quote unquote, sleeping. Beside the words, there was a picture of a young woman in a nightgown, curled up in her bed. Again, I was interested to see what that meant, so I clicked on that hyperlink. At first, all I saw was that same woman in her bed, sleeping. There was nothing out of the ordinary about it. This picture looked like a still image, one that you would take with a camera. Then, all of a sudden, I could hear a loud popping sound. At first, I thought it was coming from the music or my air conditioner, but I soon realized it came from this image. I could see the curtains moving, slowly swaying back and forth. Bringing my head up closer to the screen, I could make out the small vent right underneath the curtains. Is this a live feed? I asked myself. Situated on the right side of the bed was an alarm clock. Looking at the big flashing red numbers, it said 12:01. I quickly looked at my own clock on my computer and it also said 12:01. What is this? After a few minutes of analyzing this picture, a message popped up on this chat box. It was from the username titled "A Psycho Killer." From username "A Psycho Killer."
It's time.
At that moment, I could see the bedroom door slowly opening. A tall man with a medium build came into view. He had on black sweatpants, a black hoodie, and a ski mask. He made his way over to the bed. At first, he just stood there, watching this woman. He then reaches into his pants and pulls out a huge butcher knife. He glides it across her face, pressing it hard on her cheek. All of a sudden, you can see the woman open her eyes. She bolts up out of fear as a man throws her back on the bed. She starts screaming a piercing scream that echoes in my own home. He gets on top of her to hold her down. Without any warning, he puts the butcher knife in the air and slams it into her chest multiple times. The woman immediately becomes limp. The man proceeds to cut her neck as blood spews all over him. He takes his gloves off and starts acting like he is bathing in it, rubbing the dark liquid all over his face and neck. Tears started welling up in my eyes. I ran over to the telephone to dial 911. I knew I could not tell them who this man or woman was, but maybe I can help out in some way. As I go back to my chair, I turn to the screen. The man was standing there with a bloody knife in one hand. You could see the blood dripping off the knife onto the hardwood floor, making a puddle. As he came closer to the camera, he waved. Suddenly I heard a ding coming from the chat box. From "A Psycho Killer."
You're next.
I turned off my computer and threw it across the room. The entire next day I tried to find out if anyone found the man or woman I saw. I searched high and low on the internet, news sites and articles, but I could not find anything. It was like these two people had never existed. To this day, I have not told anyone what I saw on the deep web. I thought I was better off not sharing this information because people would think I'm crazy. But I know what I saw. It was not some type of horror film, and it was not my imagination. I went onto the web to prove myself wrong, and due to my stupidity, I watched my back every day. This story is not mine. My friend, who we will call Sandy, told me. First, a little information about Sandy and I. We met when I was in middle school. We were friends throughout middle school and high school, but lost touch when we went off to college. Though recently we ran into each other when I was out with my little sister. We talked for a while and she stopped using the deep web. When I asked why, she started to tell me this story. I thought it was creepy and decided to share, so here it is. She started by telling me she was home alone, as this happened in high school. We messed around on the deep web during high school, so this part was normal. She usually went around looking for sites about drugs, stalkers, and suicide. She could recite all the names of the sites she went on, but sadly I forgot. While looking around, she came across a website that sounded very weird. The name being something like quote-unquote pretty girl camera. Usually, we would never go on websites like that, though she decided that she would just click on it, and if she saw anything that disturbed her too much, she would just click off. Clicking on the page, it did not look creepy. The background was a light blue. It all went away when she scrolled down to see girls who looked like they were in their 20s. Being watched on what seemed like a webcam. It didn't look like they were in secret, almost like the girls were letting people film them. So, she did not get too creeped out. Underneath the videos of the girls, there was information about them. Name, age, and views. As she went down, she saw links to like personal videos. It seems normal for the deep web, but something caught her eye. It was my name. I am not going to put my real name. So for this story, we will call myself Kara. She clicked it, hoping it was not me being watched. I was 18 at the time, by the way. Though all hopes went away when she saw me. I was sitting at my desk, and it looked like I was doing homework. I was still in uniform, and the thing is, I remember doing this, so it creeps me out even more. My laptop was open and there was music playing. The laptop was facing me. I remember doing this so I could change songs without having to get up. She said it looked like it was being live streamed, and I had no clue as to what was going on. Comments started pouring in, things like,
"She's pretty."
The messages became progressively graphic. She was getting freaked out and just wanted to shut it off, but she was starting to worry. She knew if she called me and said somebody was watching me, that I would laugh at it. Though she knew that she couldn't let them watch me, she looked up information that she saw on the other videos and found it. At the end of the page, it had my name, age, race, grade, and other things. She saw a folder labeled,
"Want to see more, Kara?"
giving the idea that this happened before. She clicked on it and it led her to more videos of me. Something you should know is that I have a habit of leaving my computer on, even if using it. It's always on my desk or my bed. Video 1 was of me undressing. In video 2, I was practicing guitar. In video 3, I was making out with my boyfriend. And in video 4, I was sleeping. She said that those were all the videos. She ended up calling me, and our conversation went like this. Her: "Hey, what are you doing?" Me: "Homework, why?" Her: "Why don't we go see a movie?" Me: "Sure, can you pick me up?" Her: "Yeah, be there in a few." Then she drove and came over. Before she left, she turned off her computer and put it in her closet. When she got to my house, she made a plan. She asked for a glass of water, and as I brought it to her, she quote-unquote accidentally spilled it on my computer, making it shut down and pretty much broke it. We went to see the movie and she told me she'd get me a new computer. When she got home, she said she went right back on the website and saw a bunch of people commenting about how Kara's show ended randomly. Then, whoever she thinks made the site created a big post saying,
"Something went wrong with the computer she was using. We cannot continue the show unless we can see. So, until we find a way, the Kara show is cancelled. You may still watch her old videos."
After that, all the old Kara videos were listed. She said she was so freaked out by that, she couldn't bear to tell me and she could not go back on. She deleted Tor and disabled her webcam. That's my story.
And I hope you enjoyed.
I cannot disclose much information, but I work for the UK government. I was assigned to track down several missing people who were spotted on what is known as the deep web. I had briefly heard of this place before, but some research was required before I went in. It is a place where criminals can be safe. Contract killers, live stream murders, CP, basically the darkest depths of the internet. Time to get to it. I fired up my PC and downloaded the Tor browser. No problems. It was installed and up and running in a matter of moments. Due to my prior research, I knew the hidden wiki would lead me to find the sites I needed. The missing people had been spotted on a live stream torture site, and this is where I started. So many horrific acts. I saw one where someone captured a homeless man and the quote-unquote director was commenting on what they wanted done to him. He had his eyes gouged out, face cut, and skinned, all live streamed. Now on with the search. I was looking for a white male, brown hair, blue eyes, around 6 foot and 195 pounds. This was not going to be a pleasant experience. I counted 23 people, if not more, being tortured, raped, mutilated, and brutally murdered in front of the camera until I found one which stood out. White male, brown hair, around 6 foot. He looked about 195 pounds. I had to endure watching him tortured and killed for 47 painful and horrendous minutes. After the murder, something even worse happened. I saw that the murderer could open his chest and spread his ribs and lungs out like a bird. I had seen this before. It was the blood eagle. The blood eagle was once used to kill a king who killed someone's father. It originated in Nordic civilization. The details were not important now. What was important was the fact that the blood eagle cult could be back. A group of contract killers who operated anywhere and everywhere, always sacrificing people to the eagle, which they called God. Someone has to put a stop to this. I did not have the resources. I didn't even have any solid evidence to take to my superiors. No proof of the blood eagles even existing. Just one sick and twisted video I found on the internet. I needed a break to return to normality. I closed down the browser after exiting the site. Something was very wrong. My desktop background. It was not the picture I cherished of me graduating from Sandhurst with my proud uniform and family. It was something which would forever change me. A picture of a corpse with his ribs spread open and his lungs on display. A blood eagle. I could not take any more. I gasped and powered down my computer. A virus? Yes, it must be. Used to scare the sickos who watched those things. I ran out of my office, but I heard my computer coming back to life. Dashing back into the room, I stared in horror at the monitor. No blood, no gore, just some words. My name, then the words,
"The eye of the eagle sees all."
How did they remotely turn on my computer? How the hell do they know my name? I ran outside, grabbing my keys, wallet, phone, etc. I quickly took a breath of fresh air and walked. I just walked for a while in the real world. It was just a computer virus, right?
Wrong.
I couldn't be out too long. My wife would be coming home from work. She can wait. I was scared for once. I was truly scared. Terrified, you could say. I found myself sitting on a bench, talking to a nice old man about the weather. I forgot about everything that had happened until I went home. My door was unlocked, a tad open. Strange. Jenny, my wife, always keeps the door locked. I opened and bellowed upstairs. Sorry, love. I took a walk and needed a breather. I ran upstairs to see her. Not noticing the blood on the walls, I opened the bedroom door. The whole room was red and soaked with blood. Jenny's face was slashed up beyond all recognition, and her throat was slit multiple times. I've seen dead before, but nothing close to this. I stared in horror. The wings, her lungs spread out over her ribs. The blood eagle. What the hell? How? My flood of anger and fear and overwhelming misery was interrupted by a voice. It said my name, although heavily distorted. It came from my computer. I saw the face of a black and white mask, yet slightly pixelated. I screamed, "What have you done? Who are you? What the fuck are you?" He replied with,
"We."
He said,
"We are the blood eagle. We kill as he wishes. Do not stop us. Do not try. Do not search us, or you and your closest family will suffer. The eagle sees all and can do terrible things."
I was speechless, and feeling like I brought this upon her. I wanted nothing to do with this anymore. I made a decision. I rang the police, told them what happened. They investigated and said it was suicide. I could not believe it. Weeks passed. I was haunted by the event. I booked a flight to Canada. We had a nice little log cabin there. I packed almost everything I had, my trusty shotgun, clothes, all my cash in Canadian dollars. I left my life behind and quit my job. I never wanted to go back to the deep web or have anything to hear from it. I keep to myself and live a pretty, simple life. Therapy helped me recover. I'm happy now and years have passed. I feel safe almost. However, let this be a lesson to everyone. The eagle sees us all. Want to look into them? Do you want to stop them? Fine by me. I'm not paying for your funeral or the guy reassembling your mangled corpse.
So, like every other edgy, bored teenager during the peak years of internet freedom, I got myself into some stuff I had no business poking around in. People talk about the glory days when internet anonymity was real and you could do all kinds of illegal things, but those people are full of shit. Anonymity, online or otherwise, is a fucking joke. I learned that the hard way the summer I graduated from high school. I was held back in 3rd grade after a really serious illness kept me hospitalized for almost 6 months, so my friends graduated the year before me. My senior year sucked. I was alone, and it was too late to make new friends. So I skipped a lot of classes and spent most of my time online playing games and talking to my friends through AIM. It was actually a really dark period of my life that I try not to think about too much. And because I haven't ever tried to repeat my deep web exploration, I've forgotten a lot of the stuff I did. I do remember, though, that it was my friend Brian who got me into deep web exploration. We were all obsessed with 4chan, the B thread specifically, and an Anon had taught him how to use Tor safely. He'd been mentioning it for a while and I got curious. I asked him about it, and he made it sound like a utopia for people like us, who were tech savvy and, well, nerdy. You could find anything, he said. Any porn you could imagine was yours for the viewing. There were sites offering drugs which you could purchase and have delivered anywhere in the world. He'd been a part of a few raids too, and I admit it all sounded like a lot of fun. So I downloaded Tor, and he taught me how to access the hidden wiki and some other neat sites. It ended up taking over my life. It was like being a kid in a candy store. Suddenly, I had access to unlimited movies, games, porn, information of any kind. I stayed away from the really nasty sites, like Violent Desires and anything that had even the slightest hint of containing child porn. Of course, it's impossible to avoid that kind of thing down there, and I saw a fair share. If I'm being honest, it never bothered me much. Neither did all the very graphic gore. I'm not ill-adjusted or anything, but I never liked kids much, and I'd long since been desensitized by gore. I made it a point to report what I could and move on, but it never stuck with me. After the school year ended, I had 3 months to pass before going off to college, and I basically became a shut-in. I spent almost all my time hopping from site to site, seeing what was down there. Most of it was just backdoors to existing sites, but it was still fun to fuck around with things and be a general asshole. I still talked to my friends, but they'd moved on to WoW, and Brian in particular spent less time on the deep web than I did. However, one evening he messaged me and told me he'd found a way to view sites based on location. I have no idea how he did this, and if he told me, I quickly forgot. I assume it was some kind of script, but maybe that's not right. Either way, he showed me how to use it and I started poking around sites that were registered in my state. Most weren't anywhere close to me, so I was just opening tabs, browsing quickly and moving on. Eventually, I came across a site that was registered to someone about 2 hours from me, and I opened the page. Whoever had created the site didn't know much about design. The layout was wonky and incredibly ugly, and it took me a while to figure out how to navigate around. The links were the same color as the background, which was just a black screen with the words #1 devotee repeating over and over, and highlighting everything had been disabled, so I had to tab to find any of the links. One took me to a chat that was very active, with people posting every couple of seconds. The usernames were all generic male names, like Brad or Tim, and they were all talking about someone they called Perfection. It was really bizarre. I read the chat for a while, and literally all anyone talked about was how amazing Perfection was and how they admired everything he did. I wondered if I'd come across some kind of weird community that idolized a celebrity. It made me laugh a little, so I kept poking around while keeping the chat open in a separate window. One link led to a bunch of sound clips that were about 30 seconds in length. After listening to a few, I realized they were all just random sounds. A car door shutting, a toilet flushing, the sound of a man clearing his throat, typing. One was of terrible quality, but I can make out a baby fussing. Holy shit, these people were really dedicated. I imagined one of the members creeping up to the house of whoever it was they were obsessed with and recording any sound they could and bringing it back to the community like a treasure. I tried to figure out who Perfection was, but it was strange. His real name was never mentioned anywhere. Another link took me to some kind of digital archive that contained file downloads. Warily, I clicked on one and downloaded it. It opened up a document that was almost 500 pages long and seemed to be some kind of novel about growing up with Perfection. I only scanned it, but the general gist seemed to be that Perfection and the narrator were obsessed with each other. It read like any awful fanfiction. I closed it and downloaded another file. This one contained what looked like hand-drawn blueprints for a house, with the rooms labeled things like our studio and second kitchen for quarantine food. The latter struck me because I'm celiac, and I know all about quarantining food. Whoever it was, they had some kind of allergy too. Other documents contained inventories of strange items like Q-tips, clean and dirty, fruit rinds, cups, bits of fabric, and used tissues. I was starting to get really skeeved out. Whoever these people were, they took their obsession a little too seriously for my taste. There was even a forum dedicated to Perfection, which had thousands of threads and even more replies, all having to do with this person. It was overwhelming in a way. As I opened another link, which led me to a gallery of photos, I checked the chat and found, to my surprise, that it had stopped completely. No new messages had been posted in at least 5 minutes, and I felt a pang of paranoia. Did they know I was there? Would they be angry? I typed a quick, "Hello, just browsing, don't mind me," in the chat box and went back to the gallery. A little ding signaled a reply, but I ignored it and waited for the first image to load. It was a very grainy shot of a woman with a baby. They were exiting a hospital, the woman in a wheelchair. She looked down into the baby's face as the nurse pushed her toward the curb. The woman was familiar, but I couldn't place her, and the photo was of such poor quality that it was impossible to make out any defining features. The next photo showed the same woman and child playing in the living room. The baby was on its back, reaching up toward a hanging toy. Every photo I opened was of the woman and baby, but I noticed that as the series went on, the baby began to age, and the woman was featured less and less. And some of the photos were incredibly strange. Some were zoomed in on items the child was holding, almost to the point of being completely out of focus. Others were of footprints or broken branches. One was of a used potty chair, almost like the one I had as a kid that had been taken outside onto the lawn. Whoever was taking the photo was holding a piece of stool in their hand. This is when I started to really get unnerved. Clearly, the community that ran this site was obsessed to the point of madness about this person, Perfection. And suddenly, I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. I closed the window and the chat pinged again. This time, I checked it. Are you proud of this world? The message was from a user named Steve. I frowned and typed back. What? You must be so proud. What do you think? I had no idea what to say. I hesitated, then typed another message. It's okay. Don't be shy. My house is your house. Look around. It's something. You guys really are obsessed with this guy. There was a brief pause. Who is he anyway? Another user replied this time, someone named Bob. He is perfection. He is God. I live my life to serve him so that one day he may grace me with his approval. This world is far too filthy for him. I must continue to create our utopia. These people were fucking crazy. Clearly, I'd stumbled on some kind of community of superfans and I felt a little angry. How do you know he even wants you guys to do this? This is a pretty huge invasion of privacy. Someone else replied, Terry. We are in love. Those who keep us apart will be destroyed. I typed faster. He doesn't even know who any of you are. Get a grip. The whole self-insert thing is cringy enough, but this is all so fucking over the top. Steve replied again. What have I done to upset you? Nothing. I just think it's fucking weird that a bunch of random people have been apparently spying on someone and stealing their photos and stuff. There is only room for the two of us. The message caught me off guard, but before I could reply, every user I'd been talking to replied simultaneously. Are you proud of me? I felt a weird wiggling in my gut. Something was wrong. Does this house suit your needs, Perfection? I started to type back, but it was like someone struck the back of my head with a hammer. My heart was hammering as I reopened the gallery of photos. The hospital photo was grainy, but suddenly the woman came into focus and I made a choked sound of alarm. I scrolled to the bottom of the gallery and opened the newest photo, which had been posted only an hour before. It was of a closed door in a hallway, light seeping under the door and illuminating the walls just enough to see my framed Batman poster and the distinctive paint smeared above the doorknob, where I'd brushed a wet paint roller by mistake a year before. I frantically pored over the item catalog and found the listing for a red sweatshirt I'd lost as a toddler. I found the stuffed toys I'd thrown out or donated over the years, the condoms I'd flushed down the toilet in 9th grade, 20 pounds of feces taken from our septic tank and contained in a large plastic drum. I found my 8th grade report card and the Valentine I'd thrown in the gutter that same year out of crippling anxiety. The chat pinged again. I love you more than you will ever know. You are my perfection. I sat numbly as messages began spamming the chat, all from different users. I love you, you are God, I'll never leave you. Perfection, perfection, love you, my Lord and Savior, never leave you. I ripped the power cord out of the wall and flew out of my chair. I closed every curtain in the house and locked every door. I opened every cupboard and closet and looked under every piece of furniture until I was sure I was alone. And then I curled up under a blanket in the farthest, darkest corner of my closet and went to sleep out of some kind of shock response. When I woke up, I took my computer apart and buried it in the woods behind my house. I told my parents that it had suffered a fatal short circuit and had caught fire. They bought me a new laptop, but I could only bring myself to use it when the internet was disabled. I never found out who Devotee was. I've developed agoraphobia, and I rarely leave my apartment. It's been almost 5 years, but I still take my trash to the dump and have it incinerated. When I do go out in public, I wear large hats and sunglasses. I do everything I can to blend in and stay under the radar. My computer was unearthed and taken from its grave, but I'm not sure when. I hope I never find out. I still panic whenever things go missing around the house. I see a lot of people interested in the deep web these days, mainly teens. People talking about red doors and many other alternative names to things they think that are real, but haven't seen themselves. People question every day, are these red door events real? Do they really happen? They are very real indeed. Unfortunately, people with sick minds who get off on torture and other abnormal things go searching for these red doors. And when they find them, they dish out great amounts of money just to control the show. The shows are usually hosted by someone from the Middle Eastern portion of the world. It's always a dark-skinned person hosting the show with their faces covered by a cloth or mask. The host always seems to be in a pissed-off, demanding mood, and always seems to be under the influence of some type of drug or booze. I'm going to tell you the experience I had once when going deep into the deep end of the web. Some of you may have heard of it, but can't get there. You can't get there with Tor. Tor is infested with law enforcement. Red doors won't show up on any onion anymore like they used to. The only way you can get to see a red door show is through shadow web. And to get to the shadow web, you need an anonymous server which is called Skix. It's like the new Tor, but without the law enforcement. The world is a much more cruel place nowadays in the cyber world. As a recently retired FBI agent who specialized in cyber crimes all around the world, I'm here to share a story of what I saw in one of my last cases before I retired. The case was never closed and got passed to the agent who replaced me. This was 4 months ago. I was working on a case that had been opened up through an anonymous complaint we received online. The complaint was lengthy and in detail described and mentioned many acts of torture beyond what I had seen in my time with the agency. The tipster had sent screenshots of what he or she had seen one night while digging deep into the deep web. They explained how they had been a regular on the deep web, but how everything was dying out due to LE. That they wanted to dig deeper. So they found the shadow web. The process of becoming a member of the shadow web was lengthy. The person claimed it took them up to 2 weeks before they were granted access after paying. Finally, the email they were expecting came in and they were granted access after installing Skix. This was the new software/program that would allow them to access the shadow web servers. Little did they know what they were getting themselves into. I won't go into detail as to what they mentioned in their report because it is still under investigation due to the person being murdered in their own home. This is where I will mention my experience as part of my personal investigation. I was given a link to the shadow web by the recently deceased. With permission from the big head, I was able to sit down and proceed. I took the security precautions and paid the fee. It took the shadow web admin 2 days to send the email allowing me access. In the email, they prompted me to join as many as 4 live sessions that were going on throughout the week. One of them was called Sharkbait, another was called Shit Cereal, and the other 2 are too gross to mention. The shadow web entrance that I was given was a portal to about 10 other websites through the shadow web. The websites didn't have names. They were named by numbers in a 1 to 10 list. There were about 100 other websites on the bottom, but mainly were all under construction. On the main page, it showed the times and dates of the 4 shows they were going to be broadcasting live on the shadow web through a stream. They were archives that began in March of 2015 and ended August 23rd. These archives were a previous live stream that had already happened. I decided to take a look. The one I chose was called Salted Snail. I didn't really know what to expect before clicking it. Judging by the name, I thought there had to be a snail involved. But there wasn't. I clicked the link. It took me to a brown page with an ad and the video behind the ad. The ad started with a clown laughing. He then says, "Not so fast. You have to go through me before you see what you came to see." He reminded me of a Captain Spaulding. He had severed heads in the background. His face was painted and smeared. His clothes were splattered with bloodstains. In the ad, he encouraged viewers to come join one of the next sessions and pay the fee to see the fun unfold. He mentioned that the viewers were in charge and that they were in control of what happened to the sadistic victims. He then looked closely in the camera and said, "It's going to be one hell of a show." The ad ends. The video is now available to play. The video was titled Salted Snail. The video begins. No credit. It just begins. You see the clown again walking out from behind a white curtain that has what looked like shit or blood smeared all over it with a light behind it. His face is painted and he is naked. He walks out of the curtain chuckling to himself and smiling, scratching his ass and balls. Then he walks toward the camera and shakes his penis in front of the camera, announcing how happy he is to see new members. He then goes on a 30-second rant about law enforcement and how they can't catch him and how he is in the US and how he lives next door to a state trooper, thanking all of his friends in China. I'm guessing hackers who keep him anonymous. After his rant, he then says the show is scheduled to stream for 15 minutes, so he has to stick to schedule because he is very, very hungry and hasn't eaten in the past 2 days. He then flashes his ribs at the camera. He wasn't that skinny. He then asks everyone watching if they are ready for the show. A lot of people responding in the side chat box. Yes. He reminds everyone that he is in control for this show, not the viewers. He then chuckles and says, "I'll be right back." He goes behind the curtain. He then rolls out a black barrel and places it in front of the camera. He walks around the barrel, knocking all around it with his fists, as if knocking on a door. He then kicks it hard with his heel. You can hear something in the barrel. He then grabs what seems like a flathead screwdriver and pries it open. You can see a head full of hair as the lid opens. A girl, sitting there, alive. He then yells at her in Chinese to stand up. She can barely stand. Her body is so soggy from what I assume was water that she was in. He then looks at the camera and says, "Doesn't she look delicious? Delicious as cake." The girl had her hands tied behind her back, and her mouth was bound with multiple layers of cloth. She looked too weak to scream, too weak to escape or even attempt. She just stood there, from what seems to be like if she was accepting her death. Then the clown went behind the curtain and came back out with a knife and a razor. He got in front of the camera and said, "I love me some Chinese food. It's dinner time." The girl then turned to him and looked at him, and he nodded at her and said, "Yes, yes, it's time." Her eyes opened wide. She tried to scream but couldn't. He then teased her, poking at her with the knife. She began to bleed instantly from the poking. She was extremely soggy. Then he showed off the little razor blade and proceeded to cut little squares on her shoulder as if cutting a cake piece. Pretty soon he was at the other shoulder, then her chest, breast, and stomach. The scene was extremely gorish and violent, almost as if filleting a fish. By the time he was finished with her body, he had a plate filled with her skin and tissues. What seemed like a plate of soggy skin. The girl was still alive. Her body looked like it had been eaten by piranhas. The only thing remaining were her breasts and her face and hair. He then took the plate behind the curtain and brought back out another plate. He looks at the camera and says, "Well, look at that. Doesn't she look great? She may have lost a couple pounds, huh?" He then winks at the camera and laughs. He proceeds to cut off the girl's ears and lips. What looks now like a mutilated body that is still alive left me wondering what he had done to other people in the past. I was enraged and extremely disturbed by what I had seen. The finale showed the clown coming out of the curtain with 2 containers of salt. He then poured the salt all over her body where her skin had been cut off. He poured a good amount on her ears and lips too. The girl, suffering, hardly moving, but still somewhat standing. He then looks to the camera and says, "I bet you motherfuckers thought I was going to kill her, didn't you? I'm not a murderer." He then pushes her head back down in the barrel and closes the lid, looks at the camera and says, "Stay tuned to the next episode." The camera then shows him putting a white tablecloth over the barrel and placing the plate full of soggy flesh on the barrel. He then lights a candle, grabs a fork, and pulls up a chair. The camera shows him there, eating the flesh while chuckling away and talking to himself. The screen then floods with words. Till the next episode. Over and over and over, with some circus music playing in the background. The camera then dims as it shows him there eating and laughing away. The black screen shows the words offline. I immediately became concerned for the girl. She was Asian. The clown clearly looked American, or sounded American at least. He really resembled Captain Spaulding from The Devil's Rejects or House of 1,000 Corpses. I'm assuming that is what he was trying to be or act like. I contacted my chief and had a personal meeting with him and explained everything about what I had seen. He then laughed and said, "Ah, you've seen him, huh? That evil fucking clown on the internet. He's been around since the late 90s doing these shows. He seems to buy women off the market, then tortures the shit out of them. He then shrugs his shoulders and says, "We don't know who he is or where he's located. The Chinese help keep him anonymous." To me, this was something new. As an agent who dealt with homicides and piracy, I had never encountered nor seen anything like this. I'm now retired and thought I would share this story with Reddit. Everyone should know. The deep web is deep and free, but the shadow web, that is something you don't want to go to. Beware.
The deep web is one of the most amazing things on Earth. Not because of how joyful it makes people or anything, but because it is a completely uncensored view of people. You can speak your mind, buy what you want, do anything you want. When on the deep web, you have complete and total freedom. I had always been fascinated by the deep web, and at the time the events in this story occurred, I was in college. Lots of people at my campus had really been getting into accessing the deep web. It was almost like a trend. With so many people getting on it, it seemed perfectly safe for me to give it a try. Now, I had always heard of the deep web horror stories. Stories of hacking, stumbling on disgusting sites, and people even somehow finding your address. These stories were mainly what kept me off of the deep web. But with most of the people at my college using it on a normal basis, I decided to give it a go. I asked a friend to come over and help me set it up. When my friend arrived, we opened my laptop and began to set everything up. He told me that we were using Tor, a program that lets you access the deep web. He also asked me if I was planning on doing anything illegal, to which I replied no. He said that since I wasn't, we didn't need to install Tails, which is apparently a software that makes it more secure if you plan on doing illegal things. A little while later, everything was set up. I had my new IP address, and my friend gave me a brief rundown on what to do and what not to do. He made it very clear that when I was using the hidden wiki, that I kept it on censored mode, so that it would be less likely for me to see something I didn't want to see. After about 2 weeks of using the deep web, I felt like a pro. I had accessed many different sites, spoken with some great people, made friends, and even bought some weed. I had become cocky and was ready to dig deeper into the dark web. I turned off the censor mode on the hidden wiki and began to browse the links. It took a while, mostly because Tor is a bit slow, and many of the links just led to dead web pages. Eventually, I stumbled onto a site called All the Gore. It was mainly a big chat room, with many different topics. I had a fairly strong stomach. I had seen many violent movies, and had seen beheadings, killings, etc. through the normal internet. After looking at a few different chat rooms, I noticed how sick this site really was. The people in these chat rooms were actual killers, bragging about some of the things they had done. In the chat room, you could also post pictures. One man by the name of Culture 045 had the stage in one of the chat rooms. He was explaining in detail how he broke into someone's house, kidnapped a little girl, and brutally killed her parents by hiding under their bed and then opening their throats. He then explained how he brought the little girl back to his house, raped her, beat her, and cut her up. I didn't think he was telling the truth at first, but then he posted pictures. These were the most horrifying pictures I had ever seen. Close-ups of the poor 8 to 10-year-old girl being brutally raped, beaten, and cut with a knife. Culture kept posting pictures. The new ones were of the girl, tied to a chair, bleeding, crying, throwing up, etc. Then, he showed a picture of him with a drill, drilling into her skull. The most haunting part is that while he was doing it, he was looking into the camera with sheer joy on his face. I had seen enough and typed in the chat room window, "You people are sick and deserve to die. How can you sleep at night?" Immediately, people began making fun of me, saying that I was just as helpless and ignorant as the little girl in the pictures, and that I should get off the big boy part of the internet. They began saying I was a pussy and calling me an empath when Culture typed something in the chat box. He said, "Really? Where do you live, buddy? I'm sure everybody would love to see you on this site." I then made the biggest mistake of my life. I typed, "I'm calling the police and having this site shut down." Less than a minute later, everything on the site went black, and a new chat box appeared in green. In it, someone named Admin1 typed in the box. He said, "Call the cops and you will regret it." I didn't type anything in the box and reached for my cell phone. What happened next haunts me to this day. My phone said I had a new message. I opened it and it said, "Call the police and you're dead." There was no number. It didn't even say unknown number. It was just blank. I looked back at my laptop and saw my webcam light on. I quickly covered it, but I saw on the screen a picture of me looking at my phone. I got wide-eyed and froze for a moment when the admin typed again, "Put the phone down right now and uncover your webcam." I put my phone down, but kept the webcam covered when he typed again, "Okay, be like that." Right after, he posted my full name, age, and address in the chat box and typed, "It would be a shame if you and your college buddies went missing, wouldn't it?" I then did as he said and uncovered my webcam. He then told me to follow his instructions on how to make it impossible for me to reach the site again. I followed each and every one. When I finished, I got a text that said, "Now don't ever try to come back." Just like before, it had no number. I still called the police from my friend's phone, but they were never able to find the site. If you ever go on the deep web, don't ever just mindlessly explore, especially if you don't have additional software to keep you more secure. I was a stupid college kid, and I just hope nobody makes the same mistakes I did. I moved to a different home and changed all of my information, but I still get nightmares to this day. I was extremely rattled by what had happened. The police tried to track down the website, but since there was no way for them to recover my history, and I had originally found the sick site by just randomly clicking links, it seemed pretty hopeless to find it. The police told me to change all of my information and to move in with a friend. After changing pretty much all of my information, I decided to move in with my friend David. David was an extremely honest, hardworking person. He never went to parties, slacked off, or got drunk or high. He was very dedicated to finishing college. In fact, he was one of the few kids I knew at the time who wasn't getting on the deep web regularly. I had told him all about my experience with the deep web, and that's mostly why he agreed to let me stay with him. One night, we were both up studying very late when my phone went off. I looked to see who had texted me and saw that the number sending the message had no number, just like last time. It read, "Check your computer." There was nothing else to it, just one simple instruction. I opened my laptop, and when I did, I noticed that I didn't have control of the mouse. I tried to move it, but the mouse had just moved on its own. Someone had remote access to my computer somehow. I never gave anyone remote access before. I tried a whole bunch of keyboard commands, but not a single one worked. I noticed that whoever had control of my laptop was downloading a software, most likely malware, but there was nothing I could do. I heard my phone go off again, and this time, the message said, "Look out of your window." I was sitting right by a window. I didn't know which window the guy was referring to, so I looked out the one I was sitting by, and I saw a man in the parking lot leaning up against a white van. He had a phone in his hand, and when I looked at him, he nodded. My phone went off again. Type in and hold down Shift-Alt-5 at the same time to activate the software. I called in David to my room to show him what was going on. He seemed just as nervous as I was, but with the man just outside our window, we didn't want to anger him. David called the police right away and told me they would be there soon. I didn't activate the software, I just sat there. Eventually, I got another text. "I'm coming in if you don't do it right now." I didn't know why he, or the person in control of my computer, couldn't do it, but I didn't dare to ask. At the same time though, I was 99% sure this program had malware or spyware, or something that would be harmful to my computer, so I refused to activate it. David grabbed a baseball bat just in case the man outside tried to come in. About 5 minutes later, we heard the doorknob turning. It was locked, but we then heard banging at the door. We both freaked out, and I looked out the window again. Sure enough, the man and the van were gone. The banging on the door got more and more violent, until eventually we heard a horrible scratching sound. It lasted a few more minutes, and then we heard footsteps walk down the hall and eventually fade away. I received another text. "We will be back." That really got to me. When the cops arrived, they told me to look at my door. I followed them back out into the hallway and saw engraved on our door my name. The police began investigating the whole building, and they had a tech police officer come in and look at my computer. He began to do scans and investigate the weird software on my laptop. Eventually, he managed to close and remove it, and told me that my laptop isn't safe. He said the core files of it had been hacked. We did a complete wipe of my laptop, and he looked at my phone as well. Just like last time, he couldn't tell where the messages came from, and told me that they would be sure to keep some cops nearby in case this ever happened again. The next day, I had just got home from school and was really tired. David wasn't home yet, so I went into my room and fell into the bed. I had just begun to close my eyes when I heard a rattling sound in my closet. I lifted my head up, and I didn't hear it again, so I went back to sleep. After a few minutes, the closet door swung open. I leaped out of bed and saw a man with a mask walking over to me. I ran for the door and slammed it behind me. I ran out to the parking lot, started my car, and drove away as fast as I could. By the time the police arrived, the man was of course gone. The apartment surprisingly hadn't been wrecked or anything. We didn't even find anything stolen. He didn't seem to do anything at first. This night, 2 police officers were monitoring everyone who came in and out of the building in order to catch the man. I opened my laptop and noticed that my wallpaper had changed. It had been just a bunch of trees before, but it had been changed to a sickening photo of a man with a mask. The same mask that I saw on the man who was in my closet, digging a knife into a baby's eye in what looked like a small cabin. I also noticed that all my applications and programs were gone, and I saw the same software as last time right in the middle. I clicked on it, and it had already been installed. Just like last time, it filled the entire screen, and what looked like a live stream was going on. I couldn't exit out, and the live stream was coming from a boy's house. He looked about 13 or 14, and was at his computer. It didn't take long for me to see that I was watching through his webcam, and he had no idea. I saw a small chat box pop up on the top right of the screen, and in it, someone typed in the box, "Welcome to our live stream. We are glad everyone could be here. Thank you, John, for being here as well." My eyes got very wide. My name was John, and they were waiting until I was watching to start the live stream. As I watched, I saw that the closet door behind the poor boy slowly opened, and a man walked out with a toolbox in one hand. He quietly set the toolbox down and pulled out some duct tape. He went behind the kid and put the tape over his mouth and grabbed him tight. The poor kid's face was of total fear. He tried to scream, but he couldn't because of the tape. They were making a decent amount of noise, so I realized that the kid must have been home alone. I tried hard to exit out, but I couldn't. I then saw the man take out a screwdriver and drive it into the kid's chest. Blood began to pour out, and the kid made an awful wheezing type noise. I saw tears come from his eyes as this sick man began to drive the screwdriver deeper and deeper, and then yanked it out. The man then took a hammer and smashed the kid's hands several times, till they were nothing more than a mangled bloody mess. I tried every command I could to exit, but nothing was working. I noticed that in the chat box several people were cheering the man on and requesting for him to do different things to the boy. The man then took out a handheld electric saw, pressed it against the boy's face and turned it on. The boy screamed with pain as the saw went up into his eye, causing blood to go everywhere, and got on the camera a little as well. I started to get tears in my eyes, as I couldn't stop it. Then, the man took the screwdriver, gouged out the kid's eyes, and took out a large knife. He proceeded to slit the boy's throat and tossed him on the ground. I was sick. I threw up all over the floor, and when I looked back, I saw in the chat box people typing in horrible things like fap, or oh my god, that was so wonderful, thanks so much for doing this, etc. In the box, I saw someone named Culture045 type in, "Thanks for watching, John." After that, the program closed on its own, and I was left with the sickening wallpaper. I was sweating, breathing heavy, and feeling sick. Throughout the entire thing, I didn't realize that my phone had gone off several times. I looked at it, and the most hateful mean messages were coming from my friends and family. I asked my mom what was wrong, and she texted me back, "You sent that sick, disturbing live stream to everyone. I can't believe who you are. The police have been called." I felt even more sick than before. Those monsters had sent that live stream to all my friends somehow, and made it come from me. They had pretty much ruined my life within a couple of minutes. When the police arrived, I told them everything that had happened, and quickly they managed to explain to all my friends and family what really happened. They cracked down on finding these people, and a month later, 4 men had been arrested. One was Culture045, the other was Admin 1, and the 2 others were working with them. The site was found and shut down as well, and I got a new laptop and phone. I could say some horror cliche here, and say something like I kept getting texts, or kept hearing weird things ever since, but none of that happened. They were arrested, and I never heard anything further. It's good to know that those men are in jail, or perhaps even dead, but what scares me is all the other people watching the live stream, who are there for pleasure, are still out there, and that there's probably thousands of other Culture045s out there all over the world. If you ever go on the deep web, make damn sure you're as careful as possible.
This story is 100% real. It is about an experience I had going on the deep web. For those of you who don't know, the deep web is pretty much the hidden internet. It isn't indexed by search engines, and you need special software to go on it. It is several thousand times bigger than the surface internet, which can be reached by Google or Yahoo, etc. It is also home to many illegal things. You can buy stolen guns, any drug you can imagine, stolen phones. You can even hire hitmen. Any illegal thing you can imagine is on the deep web. I never had a great childhood. My dad was gone all the time, and my mom was too. When she was home, it was normally verbal and physical abuse. I always needed to have a way to escape it all, whether it was playing video games, watching movies, or even drinking. One day, I was invited over to a friend's house for a sleepover. When I got there, he immediately told me he had something to show me. We went upstairs, and he showed me his laptop. He said he had got onto the deep web. We stayed up late that night, browsing through all the interesting things on it. He showed me how to use it, and I took some notes. The next day, I decided to try it out for myself. I downloaded the software, and I was good to go. When on the deep web, there is a page full of links. In order to go to sites, you keep clicking on the new links that pop up. At first, it was very boring. Tons of dead websites, or disgusting ones, filled with videos of real people being killed. Eventually, I found a forum. I can't remember what it was about, but I asked how to get to any interesting sites that were not illegal. One guy sent me a link and said it was a site that contained leaked government documents. I thought that was interesting, so I clicked on it. When I pulled up the page, I was pretty shocked. It was a bunch of videos of people being tortured, raped, murdered in the most horrible of ways. I have a pretty strong stomach, so I was ready to ignore it and just exit, but I realized that all the videos were playing at once. When I moved the mouse over one, there was no bar that let you pause or stop it. That's when it hit me. These were all thousands of live streams. I clicked on one that said, "Homeless man kidnapped in my basement." In it, a man was tied to a chair, covered in blood. To his left was a table, and on it was a whole bunch of tools like axes, knives, drills, hammers, etc. And there was a hooded man standing by it. On the right of the live stream, there was a chat box, and people were requesting the hooded man to do various things, like cut off the homeless man's hand, rip out his hair, and nasty things like that. Eventually, one man in the chat box said that he would pay several Bitcoin for the hooded man to gouge out the homeless man's eyes. The hooded man agreed and grabbed what looked like a fork off the table and began to walk over to the homeless man. I quickly closed the live stream, but I could still hear it. I tried to leave the site, but it was frozen, and I could only hear the horrible sounds coming from the stream. A few seconds later, the sounds stopped, and a chat box appeared in the center of my screen. I couldn't exit it out, but then, in the box, somebody typed in, "Hello, how did you like the site?" I paused for a moment, not sure if it was some kind of automated message, but then he typed again, "Are you going to answer?" I stayed frozen in place, but eventually typed in, "Who is this?" The guy explained that he was the owner of this site and that he liked to greet first-time users whenever he could. I got a disgusted look on my face, and this is where things got really scary. In the chat box, the man typed, "It's rude to make faces, Jake." My eyes got wide, and I noticed my webcam was on when I always keep it off. Also, how did this man know my name? I covered up the webcam with a sticky note and typed, "How do you know my name? I'm calling the police. There was a brief pause, and then horrifyingly, a whole bunch of data was posted in the box. I looked at it and realized what it was. It was everything about me. My full name, email, address, my age. It even had all my parents' info as well. I panicked and shut off my computer, and I hoped that it would be the end of that. I did a complete wipe of all my computer's data and went to get a drink. I was under a lot of stress. That night, my mom said she wouldn't be home. She didn't say where she was, but at this point in my life, I didn't care. My dad, of course, was nowhere to be seen. I couldn't sleep, so I stayed up watching a movie. I ended up falling asleep on the couch. I don't know why, but at about 2:30 in the morning, I woke up. The TV was still on, and it gave off a dim light. But when I opened my eyes a little more, I almost screamed. There was a man standing just a few feet away from me with a mask on. I flew off the couch and darted for the door. I heard heavy footsteps coming after me. I flung open the door and ran outside screaming as loud as I could, trying to get someone's attention. I looked behind me and saw the man. He was running, and he was faster than me. I screamed louder and noticed I had tears running down my face. Then, a bag wrapped around my head, and I was pushed to the ground with such force that I felt blood in my mouth. I heard a car speed up beside me, and I was being dragged to the sound of it. They were taking me away, and probably I was going to be on that website. I had almost accepted my fate when the man with the mask screamed in pain and dropped me. I pulled the bag off my head and saw a van speed away, and then I saw my neighbor hitting the masked man with a baseball bat. The police arrived, took the masked man in, eventually caught the van, and shut down the site. My mom and I moved out, and I will never, ever go on the deep web again. And I encourage others to never go on it either.
I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. It all started a few days ago. Now I'm sitting alone in my basement, praying to God whatever is outside will just turn around and leave me alone. On July 25th, I accessed the deep web for the first time after downloading the Tor browser and toying with the idea, but being far too much of a pansy to actually go through with it. On that day, though, I manned up and went for it. What's the harm, right? I avoided clicking on anything that didn't have a description on the list of websites, eventually going to the hidden wiki because it provided a little bit more information on what I would be clicking on. I only read, never clicking on anything out of fear of what would happen. That is, of course, until I came across a website advertising hitman services. I would never, ever hire a hitman for any reason, but I thought to myself that there was no way that this was a real thing. I went ahead and clicked the link and read through the website, reading the prices for different services. So many options for so many different types of people. I got a little freaked out and minimized the browser, closing my laptop and moving on with my day. When I got home later that evening, I powered my laptop back up and did typical teenager things. Music downloading, Reddit, Facebook, you know. Eventually I passed out and didn't hear my laptop hit the carpet or anything. The next day I went about my regular schedule, never even looking at my laptop until the 28th, so yesterday. I opened Tor again in the afternoon and let my curiosity get the best of me. I opened it to full screen, which earned me a warning about how it could make tracking me down easier. I'm not sure how, since my IP address is in Stockholm and I'm nowhere near there. But I shrugged it off and kept scrolling through the wiki. I got curious again and went back to the Hitman site, but it was gone. I've checked the listings and everything. The website is completely gone. A little freaked out, but not really worried, I moved on back to my regular internet. This brings us to now. I was about to settle down and go to bed when I heard something very unnerving. The crickets and frogs were almost completely silent. I live in the country, and the crickets and frogs around my house are wicked loud at night, but there were very few sounds coming in through the windows. I sat still and listened for about an hour, and they slowly began to get louder and louder, so I assumed the danger was gone. Now fully awake, I pulled up my laptop, feeling a little anxious because of the warnings I got while browsing the deep web yesterday. In the past 5 minutes, a few things have happened. First, my Tor browser was open and running, even though I had closed it. Second, my webcam was on. Third, the crickets and frogs are still going, and there's someone gently tapping on my bedroom door. My basement bedroom door. The threat never left, the threat just somehow moved inside my house. I'm typing this from my phone in my closet, trying desperately not to lose my mind. I'm trapped, guys, and I don't know what's happening. Please, help me.
This story happened to my friend on the deep web just 1 week ago. I had a pretty scary experience too, but mine was a few years ago. For those who don't know, the deep web is pretty much the internet that isn't indexed by search engines like Yahoo, Google, and Bing. It can only be accessed by special software, such as Tor. To give you some context, this is the friend that showed me how to get onto the deep web. He has always been really fascinated with it, but after my horror story experience with deep web hackers, he pretty much took a long break. He didn't resume using the deep web until about a year after my story, but he didn't tell anyone. He would buy stolen Apple products and drugs, and about a week or two ago, he was buying cocaine. It wasn't from the seller he normally buys from though, but it was really cheap, so he gave the seller his address and a fake email he used so they could stay in contact until the deal was done. He wasn't too worried. This guy seemed professional, and it was the same procedure for most of his purchases. My friend told him to ship it in a movie case, or something his mom wouldn't expect to have drugs in. This was his biggest mistake. He let the man know he was just a teenager, but my friend isn't the most careful of people. A few days later, his mom walks in the house and hands my friend a movie that he had ordered online. He took it and opened it up, but inside there wasn't any cocaine, just a piece of folded up paper. He opened it up and read, "There has been a problem. Email me for details." At the bottom, the man left a new email for my friend to contact. My friend got on his email and asked the guy what the problem was. "Something has happened. If I were to send it to you, it could be traced back to me, and we would both be caught. Meet me at the elementary school at 7 o'clock. We will just do it in person." The school wasn't too far away, so my friend told his mom he was staying the night at my house, and he headed off to meet the man. He called me and asked if I could be there with him, but I was really busy with my schoolwork, so I said I couldn't. I did tell him to take a knife or something though, just in case things went wrong. When he got to the parking lot outside the school, he heard a car honking its horn. He saw it was a Jeep, but the plates had been covered up by duct tape, and the windows were tinted very dark. The man got out of the car and gave my friend the drugs, and my friend paid him. It seemed like everything went fine. My friend got in his car and sat there a bit in order to call and tell me everything went fine. He noticed when he hung up that the man was still there. Why was he waiting? He didn't think too much of it and drove off. When he got to the first red light, he noticed that the man's car was right behind him. He was starting to get a little nervous, but kept driving. When he reached his neighborhood, the man was still following him, so he decided it would be a bad idea to lead him to his house. He instead turned into the next neighborhood and took a whole bunch of random turns, hoping to lose the man. Eventually, he no longer saw the car, so he pulled the car into his garage and called it a night. That night, he noticed the sound of a car engine. He looked out his window and saw the man's car parked in his driveway. He got wide-eyed and snuck downstairs and peered through the window. Inside the car, the man was smoking a cigarette and talking on the phone. But in the passenger seat, he also saw a second man. The second one was a lot more suspicious looking, even more so than the shady drug dealer. This second man had messed up hair, a trashy shirt, and while it was hard to see, my friend could almost make out a scar from a massive burn on the side of his neck on his face. He kept watching the two men until the second man began to look at the window more and more often. Eventually, he was just staring at the window my friend was watching them from. My friend decided he'd had enough and was going to call the cops. He didn't care if he would get in trouble at this point. He moved away from the window and called the police, who told him to grab a weapon or something to defend himself and wait for the police. He waited for about 5 minutes when he saw a figure quietly come out of his mom's room, who was still sleeping. The man shut the door behind him and noticed my friend had seen him. The figure sprinted towards my friend with what looked like a knife raised in his hand. My friend grabbed the pot from a nearby table and threw it at the figure. It hit the man in the face and shattered. The figure screamed and fell to the floor. My friend turned on the light and saw the second man with the burn rolling on the floor, his face covered in blood and shards of glass sticking out. His right eye had tons of blood pouring out. He must have been hit pretty hard. As the man began to slowly get up, my friend grabbed the kitchen knife and drove it into the man's shoulder, as another scream could be heard from the man. The man began to stumble over to the front door when police sirens could be heard. Both men were caught on sight, but my friend's mom had been killed. Her throat had been slit, and she had 23 stab wounds and duct tape covering her mouth. My friend was arrested as well for drug possession. His trial is coming up, but he lost his mom because of this. I don't think he will be buying drugs from the deep web ever again.